Hey guys, Pastor Tim here. Hope you're ready for another video from our youth group at Lighthouse Baptist Church. If this is your first time watching a video or you're trying to catch up on a missed lesson, we hope that this video is a blessing to you and helps you grow in your relationship with Jesus Christ.
We started chapter 12 of 1 Corinthians. So obviously open your Bibles up to 1 Corinthians chapter 12. And we were talking about the unity of the body. Obviously you see tonight we're going to talk about the diversity of the body. Because yes, we talked about spiritual gifts. And he's saying the whole point though is they are to work in one body. Correct? So there's the unity. But there's different gifts. And that's what we're going to kind of get on today is the diversity of the body. Everyone has different members, as Paul refers to, of their bodies, not the same thing. Okay? Unity without diversity can have some negative consequences. Okay? Paul, he uses the body to describe the church. All right? The church is the body of Christ and so forth. And if a body was all one member, like it was all an ear or all a nose or all a thumb or something like that, it would die. Okay, it wouldn't be able to eat, it wouldn't be able to survive or anything. If you think about that, how many of you guys have ever seen the movie Spy Kids? Okay, so no, that came out when I was a kid, and they had like these villains that were thumbs. Okay, and if you ever thought about that, how would they live? They can't eat, they can't breathe, they're literally a thumb. That's kind of a silly picture. Obviously, it was a very silly kids movie anyway. But that's kind of what Paul, as we're going to read here in a second, is kind of alluding to why the diversity, the differing gifts that the members of the church had was so important, was because if everyone was the same thing, the church would die, or the body, quote unquote, would die. If the whole body was a thumb, that would just be weird. But it would eventually, there's consequences to that. See, diversity is necessary for a church to grow and function. It brings about creativity and new ideas. However, if diversity is not kept under control, it could destroy the unity that the church needs. All right? Instead of unity, it leads to anarchy. All right, so as we get into this, we're going to go from verse 14 all the way to the end. We're not going to read all of those verses right now, but we're going to begin with our first point, and that is that diversity allows growth. Okay, and as I'm going through this right now, understand the context of the passage. Paul is talking about the diversity of gifts, all right? And in that is also roles as well. So everyone in a church, God has gifted them with different spiritual gifts, all right? God has gifted all of you with different spiritual gifts, but as well, he has also established different roles as well that people have within a church, okay? So as I'm talking about diversity today, I don't want you to get it confused with what's definitely being promoted. I know Gage used that as a joke earlier, but what definitely is always being pushed and so forth in the world today, especially when it comes to social issues and things like that, all right? I'm talking about the gifts that God has given to each person in the church and as well as the roles that he has established in the church. Now, that kind of diversity allows for growth to happen in the church. Let's look at verse 14, and we're going to read to verse 20. All right, verse 14, it says, "For the body is not one member, but many." Remember talking about the different parts of the body, but also illustrating how there's many members in a church body. "If the foot shall say, because I am not the hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body?" No, it's still attached. If it decides to detach itself, if that was actually possible, it wouldn't live, okay? It would die off. Once again, no diversity leads to negative consequences. Verse 16, "And if the ear shall say, because I am not the eye, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye," all right, this goes to the Spy Kids illustration, where were the hearing? If the whole body were hearing, where were the smelling? But now hath God set the members, every one of them, in the body, as it hath pleased him. And if they were all one member, where were the body? But now are they many members, yet but one body." Okay, so if you guys kind of lost it there, he's talking about now we're just talking about a physical body. God has created man with all his appendages and so forth, limbs, to be a growing, thriving, functional body in this world. All right? God created that on purpose. Okay? Now we know because of corruption and how sin has corrupted this world, we know about disabilities and diseases and other things that that ravage God's perfect creation, but in general, God created the human body the way it is to be able to function in an ideal circumstance, ideally as a human body should. Okay, you guys follow that? Much in the same way with the church. Okay, God has bestowed upon varying members different gifts to use in the church. He has established different roles within the church so that the church can function to the best of its ability as God intended. If everybody's striving for one role, then other things aren't going to get done. If everyone just wants to, oh, I wish I had this one gift, all right, then they're neglecting a different area of ministry that needs more work. I gave the example a couple weeks ago when we talked about the need for structure. Okay, and this was in chapter 11, I think, when we were talking about headship and submission. It was talking about men and women. And I gave the example of, even at McDonald's, they understand there's structure that's needed. There's roles. There's the manager, and there's these workers, and that's needed so that things could get done. If everybody wants to be the manager, well, then who's going to make the fries? Okay, and then nobody wants to go to McDonald's anymore. Most people don't like it. But anyway, in much the same way, the church at Corinth was having a problem because people very much wanted to have these gifts that were, in their eyes, the best gifts. And for some reason, many scholars believe that the one that they were most trying to puff themselves up about was the gift of tongues. I don't know why, but that was one that was very much, oh yeah, I have the gift of tongues. And we're going to see in the next chapter, aka the love chapter, how that may have been the case where they're all about, speaking in tongues, and Paul's letting them know, that's not the main point. That's not the main deal. One other thing I want you to point out really quickly here is that comparison can lead to death. Okay, and what I mean by that is that it can be the death of many things. You guys have heard me say this before. What is one thing I say that comparison is the death of? Locke. Contentment. Joy. Yeah, but you can put in a lot of things. Comparison could be the thief of joy or the death of joy, all right, because, man, I'm not as good as so-and-so, or I wish I was like so-and-so. Or it can be the death of relationships. Okay, I used to be friends with someone, but, something that they have that you don't have, you just can't handle that anymore. The Bible, something that is likened to this, I have it in your notes there, Exodus 20, verse 17, one of the 10 commandments, thou shalt not covet. Same idea. It could be the death of relationship, the death of growth, and as we're talking about here in the church, it could be the death of ministry as well. If everyone is comparing, what role I have or what ministry I have compared to someone else in the church, it could lead to the detriment and the death of that ministry. Someone find for me Galatians chapter 1, verse 10. Galatians chapter 1, verse 10. No member... Yeah, go ahead, Jether.
For do I now persuade man, or God, or do I seek to please men? For if I yet please men, I should not be the servant of Christ.
Right. All right, very important thing to memorize there. If you find yourself caught up in a rut or in this this attitude of comparing what you have or what you're doing to what someone else has, you're ultimately trying to please man, not God. The man in particular is usually yourself, all right? Or you're trying to impress somebody else. And obviously, if that's the case, you're not fulfilling the ministry or the goal that God has intended for you as a servant of God, whether it be for that gift or that role. No member should compare or contrast themselves with any other member because each one is different and each one is still important, all right? The body parts in your body, it makes no sense for them to compare themselves to one another because they're created in their way for a specific purpose and they have a set value and importance because of that. I don't know the validity of this thing. Miss Christine might know better, but you guys have all heard the thing about if you were to lose your big toe, you wouldn't be able to walk that well or something like that. And a toe, in the grand scheme of things, you don't really think about it. You almost think of it as an insignificant thing, but it's still very important. There's bones in your body that are probably very minute compared to your femur or something else, but I tell you, if you didn't have that bone, you would notice it, okay? Don't compare. Understand that God has bestowed on you certain gifts, a certain role, whatever ministry you may be a part of, for His honor and your glory, and not your glory, for His honor and His glory. All right, don't compare yourself to other people. Focus on serving God. Church of Corinth, they were trying to, they very much were about, hey, I want to talk about the gifts that I have that put me in the limelight. All right, but that obviously goes against what Christ wants for all believers, and that is the attitude of humility, not pride. Here's an important thing to understand. Diversity does not suggest inferiority. All right, which means to say, if my spiritual gift does not mean that I am inferior to someone else who has a different spiritual gift. Remember that spiritual gift test we took? Some people may see like the gift of helps, like working behind the scenes, helping people out or something like that. Some people may see that as lesser than the gift of preaching or prophesying, the person that's up front preaching God's word. And it's understandable to think like that because you think, all right, the person that's up there, he's obviously the most important person, right? He's up higher than us. He's up in front of everyone. But it's still important for someone to be doing even the behind-the-scene work. My friend Mike Graham, who's the program director at Southland Christian Camp, I've told you guys this many times before, he used to tell me a good saying where he's like, hey, someone has to cut the grass. Okay, and that was actually his job for a while. He actually has his own landscaping company as well. But he said, hey, someone needs to do these things or else it's going to become a distraction, and it has a great importance to the ministry at the camp there. If all the ops staff guys who were assigned to mow the grass every week just decide, you know what, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be a counselor because they get to do more things and they get to be seen by the other campers and stuff more. Well, what's going to happen to the grass? Overgrown. It's going to be overgrown. And guess what people are going to notice when they come to camp? It's like, man, this place is very unkempt, It's like grass is everywhere. And then next thing you know, believe it or not, that's going to factor into some adults' decisions about whether or not they want to bring their kids back to camp. Because you're like, man, they don't even care enough to take care of their land. They don't even care enough to cut the grass right in front of the main building, right? Those things still have importance, even if to some people in our human eyes, we may see them as inferior to the guy that gets to speak up front. You guys follow? All right? Every differing gift, every differing role is important because God bestowed it in that manner, and diversity allows for the growth of the church. Secondly, diversity promotes dependence. All right? The world is very much about being independent, but understand how God created man. God created man as dependent beings. I've said this all the time. What was the first thing that God said was not good? For man to be alone. Human beings are created by God to be interdependent beings. Can anyone possess all the spiritual gifts? No, it's not possible. Remember, you can't be all of the body. That's not possible. And God, I believe, did it that way on purpose so that we would not be puffed up in ourselves and that we would invest in those relationships that we should invest in. Each member needs the other members. Let's look at verse 21. We're going to read verse 21 to 26. Okay? And it says, and the eye cannot say unto the hand, I have no need of thee, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. Because then the head couldn't go anywhere. The eye, if it said to the hand you didn't need it, well, the eye can't grab anything. Verse 22, nay, much more those members of the body which seem to be more feeble, and I refer to like minute bones you might not even think of, they're still important. All right, they're necessary, as verse 22 says. Verse 23, and those members of the body which ye think to be less honorable. All right, and you can think of that however you will, but there are parts that, it's just not appropriate to talk about, but they're still important. Upon these we bestow more abundant honor, and our uncomely parts have more abundant comeliness. For our comely parts have no need, but God hath tempered the body together, having given more abundant honor to that part which lacked, that there should be no schism, fancy word there, in the body, and that the members should have the same care one for another. And whether one member suffer, all members suffer with it, or one member be honored, all members rejoice with it. Verse 25 where he says, there should be no schism. Does anybody know what schism means? Gage. Divide. Like I said before, all right? If you were to get a limb amputated, okay, that limb apart from the main body, is it going to do anything? Maybe for like a brief second or something. It'd be really creepy. But no, it doesn't make sense to have a divide, a schism in the body, because that leads to death of that member. All right? The same thing, too, in a church, with church splits, church divides, and so forth. It most of the time leads to the death of that church. God doesn't want any of that. Verse 26, it says, and whether one member suffer, all the members suffer with it. So if one part of your body, all right, and some of you guys, How many guys know what a hypochondriac is? Okay, my brother Chris was a little bit like this. All right, he hurt himself like on his, a little boo-boo here or there, and like, oh, he's gonna die. How many? Some of your dads might be like this. They're all tough and stuff, and all of a sudden they have a cold and they just can't function for the rest of the day or something. Like, oh, I'm bedridden. Tell my wife I love her or something like that. Okay, that's a silly picture, but it kind of illustrates if something's wrong in one part of your body, the way your neural system works and stuff, your whole body knows it. All right, I need to take care of this. All right, this hurts, and your focus is on that one part. Saying here, if one member suffer, all members suffer, meaning, hey, the whole church should be, hey, something's going on with this one person, and he needs help. If one member is being honored or benefiting or growing, that is to the honor and joy of the rest of the members as well. All right, let's get back to John 15:5 in your notes. That is the verse you guys know. I am the vine, ye are the branches. If any man abide in me and I in him. The need for dependence not just on man, but also on God. But Ecclesiastes 4, let's all turn there. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. This is a very popular verse as well, if you guys recall from when we went over Ecclesiastes. But it describes how man, it's not just natural, but it's important for believers especially to be interdependent on one another. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9. We're going to read verse 12. It says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. All right, 2 people together can get more things done than one person, okay, in general. Verse 10, and if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. Verse 11, again, if 2 lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against him, 2 shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Okay, you can snap one cord by itself, but if you intertwine them with another cord and another cord upon that, all right, it's not easily broken. If one man is, getting in a fight, or say like a bandit or something falls upon a lone traveler, well, chances are that lone traveler is going to get robbed. But say if that traveler wasn't alone and he had a companion or 2 companions, well, then that bandit might be in trouble. That's the illustration he's getting there. Okay? 2 is better than 1. Our interdependence, our relationships, each member needs the other members. In a healthy body, the various members cooperate with each other and even compensate for each other's deficiencies or when crisis occurs. Just like he gave the example, when one part of the body is hurt, the rest of the body suffers as well. Let's put it this way. Diversity leads to disunity. Okay? We talked about that earlier. It can lead to disunity when members compete with one another. When they're comparing themselves, which the church at Corinth was doing, like, hey, my gift is way better than Jether's gift. Something like that. Yes, diversity will lead to disunity if it's all about competition, if it's all about raising myself above the other people in the church or something like that. Okay? That's a no-no. However, diversity leads to unity when the members care for one another. Oh, Luke is struggling. Oh, Luke's having a hard time. Just like the body wants to compensate and help the rest of the body when one part is hurt. Hey, I'm going to come alongside. I want to help Luke with whatever he's going through. All right? Because as part of the church body, I want to help him out. Okay? You want the whole body to be healthy. Same as when Amethyst, has some unexpected blessing or, whatever it may be, I'm not going to be like, man, I wish I had that. Oh, man, I wish my life was doing that. No, I'm going to rejoice with her. All right, that's how your attitude should be. I want to rejoice with those that rejoice. Okay, I don't want to just think and covet and think about, well, man, I wish I had the same thing. No, that leads to disunity. Unity, I care about that. I'm happy about that. Or, hey, I care about you. I want to help you. That is the correct way for diversity to be enacted throughout the church, okay? And that's why diversity promotes dependence. All right, last point. Diversity fulfills God's will. I alluded to this earlier. Hey, God bestowed upon each man their varying gifts to all the varying people of the church. He established the differing roles, and that's for a purpose, for the church to function, ideally, to promote the gospel, to grow, and so forth. And to go against that is going to lead to negative consequences. All right, to promote yourself above everyone else in the church is going to lead to negative consequences. Let's read verse 27 to the end of the chapter. All right, and I need to go back. I'm still in Ecclesiastes. All right, so 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 27 to the end. Now ye are the body of Christ, and members in particular. And God hath set in the church first apostles, secondarily prophets, thirdly teachers, after that miracles and gifts of healing, helps, government, diversities of tongues. What's the last gift I just listed there? Tongues. So Paul, this is a brief aside here, I'm just going to put up your next 2 points here. Paul, he lists off a priority list, okay? And that's not to negate what we just learned so far about the importance. Everybody has a different gift. Every person is still important. Each gift has its importance. But there is a certain priority when it comes to some of the roles, okay? He lists off first apostles. And the apostles were first important because they were very important to the foundation of the church. Remember, this is the early church, okay? We don't have apostles today because we don't need that founding of the church. The church is already here, okay? And he goes on in verse 28, he says apostles, secondarily prophets. Those are those that are proclaiming the word. We would refer, or more think of as preachers today. Thirdly, teachers, those that are teaching. If you want to liken it unto Sunday school teachers and master club workers and so forth who are imparting God's truth unto the members of the church. Okay, and we see the same type of structure in our church today, pastor, teachers, and so forth. So that's not wrong. They're still important. The pastor still needs help. The teachers still need a leader to guide them and so forth. But I want to bring up that the last thing, and it goes into the gift of healings and tongues. And remember we talked about last week about sign gifts, all right? And those things, do we still have sign gifts today? No, those have passed off, all right? And I told you earlier, I'm going to give it a second for them to kind of walk by. But I mentioned earlier how many scholars believe that the Corinthians were very much about the gift of tongues. And what was the last gift that was mentioned there? So in the list of priorities, and it was almost like, now we see in hindsight that they were getting all puffed up about what was the least gift, and also a gift that didn't even exist after that. All right, their priorities were all messed up. They were puffed up for all the wrong reasons. They desired this gift for all the wrong reasons. Let's finish off the chapter, and then I'll continue the lesson here. Verse 29. Are all apostles? Is everybody in the church an apostle? No. Okay, we don't even have that today. Are all prophets? Are all preachers? Pastors? No. Okay. Are all teachers? Are all workers of miracles? Anybody? All right. Have all the gifts of healing? Do all speak with tongues? Do all interpret? So you guys understand, it's all emphatically no. All right, because nobody can be all things. All right, there needs to be, as we already talked about, God has established different roles. He has bestowed upon everybody different gifts. This diversity that is necessary, as we already said, for growth, for dependence, and to fulfill God's will, most importantly and above all. Verse 31, but covet earnestly the best gifts, yet show I unto you a more excellent way. And this is kind of a segue, all right, into the next chapter. But he says, it's okay to desire, and there's other verses in the Bible that, talk about it's a good thing to desire other gifts, but you don't want that desire to become an all-consuming thing like the church of Corinth was allowing. It's a good thing to desire, hey, I want to be better at preaching, or I want to be better at teaching. Okay, that may not be necessarily the way that God has blessed you in your spiritual gifts. Maybe you're not so much, you know yourself if you're comfortable talking in front of other people. And Miss Christine and I had the joy of working with some people that for the teen service that, oh no, I can't talk. But if you recall, when we took our spiritual gift test, I mentioned just because you find that you're more gifted or that this may be your spiritual gift does not excuse you from partaking in those times when you have to use maybe a different spiritual gift. All right, all because, hey, I'm more of a behind-the-scenes guy and I'm more about just helping in that way or something like that does not excuse you from when the opportunity comes to witness or to teach, be like, oh, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Oh, I wish I could tell you about the gospel, but I'm not much of a preacher or anything like that. No, that's ridiculous. All right? Or for a pastor who preaches, and he's very gifted in that aspect, it doesn't excuse them from the gift of administration. All right, well, I'm just not very organized and so forth. But you're the head of a church, all right? You need to learn, okay? Just because you're more gifted in one area does not excuse you. And that's what he's kind of referring to here. Hey, desire those greater gifts, all right? But don't let it be this all-consuming thing where you neglect how God has gifted you in your life, or cause you to neglect the role he has also bestowed upon you as well. All right? Do not allow the desire to grow into an all-consuming thing like the church at Corinth. And you notice at the end of verse 31, he says, "And yet show I unto you a more excellent way." And we're going to see next week, all right, how that excellent way he's going to talk about. And what we usually think of as the love chapter, all right, but what he's really talking about is that unity and diversity must be balanced by maturity. All right, and that's most seen through using those gifts in love in serving Christ.